Hello, this is Luke, and I'm back with another episode of building a self-hosted analytics service from scratch. So let's get started with our usual stuff. We're going to run our development server here. We are going to open a new tab, run our client-side bundler, and we should be good to go. So if we look at localhost 3001, we can see the dashboard that we have started working on. But before we actually get too much into the dashboard, there's something else that I'm kind of excited to do today. Last stream, I talked about some issues I was having with using shadcn UI and Tailwind with bun build, where this build command, in this case, I'm just building the tracker file, but if I were to try building the whole site, we would run into some problems. And I've since actually managed to fix that, and I want to set up a build for the whole site because of Bun's really cool ability to create single file executables, which I think is just a super good and kind of exciting way to distribute your open source applications. People don't need any dependencies. They don't need to have NPM installed. They don't need to check out your source code. And they can easily run their, your application in whatever context works for them, right? So let's actually look at the docs here. And I've set up kind of a complicated build and release pipeline for another app of mine that uses a similar stack, where when you push a commit to GitHub, with a new tag, like a new version, it's automatically going to run a build script that's going to create binaries for a bunch of different operating systems and architectures. And then it's going to create a GitHub release with all of that stuff in there automatically. So it sort of looks like this, where you get these releases. And they have binaries here that people can just download and use. And this is really cool, in my opinion. A really nice feature that Bun has. But it's a bit early to set something like this up for the app that I'm working on stream, because it's not, look at it. We don't need to release this. It's not alpha. This is like barely anything status, right? But I do want to set up a build just so that we can kind of prove that out and make sure that it's working as we iterate on the actual application. So we're basically going to do something kind of like this. And I'm just going to copy this for now. And we will call it build. And this other one, I'm actually going to get rid of for now. Or let's call it build tracker. Sure. And this one would be like build tracker dev for now. Okay. All right. So for the build here, we need to give it a path to basically our entry point for our application, which for this particular one is server/index, if I recall. Like if we look at the start, it's basically this path here. And really, let's actually make an index under source, so people don't need to, look for the entry point over here. And I'm going to make a function, just export function start server. And that's going to call these things here. And we might factor this differently later, but for now, I'm just getting that into this kind of main entry point file. Start server. Okay. So now our entry point is actually this, source index.ts, which is very standard. And we're going to do the same thing here, source index.ts. And the out file is going to be dist/ Nanalytics. And because I'm actually running this on Windows, this is going to automatically append .exe to it. So I don't need to do that. And what we're saying here is we're building, we're not just, so if you just do build, what you get is like what we've got here. It's a JavaScript file, right? It's like a bundler. But if you pass the compile flag to it, it doesn't just bundle up all of your code. It actually builds a whole self-contained binary that includes the bun runtime and all of your dependencies as well. Minify is going to take that, your code, and just like minify it as it builds. Pretty standard thing to include. Source map includes source maps in that build. So, you know, if you get a stack trace error, it's going to actually have recognizable names in it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So the problem is, let's kind of illustrate this. So if I do bun run build now, it works, but we run into this issue where it doesn't understand how to parse our CSS, specifically the Tailwind like at thingies. If we look over here, dashboard, index.css, we've got these like at import, at layer, you know, at media, obviously it knows. And like these things as well, like it doesn't understand those. So we get all these warnings. And if we actually try and run that analytics.exe, which I think I can do like this. In 1 sec. Okay. I got like a firewall warning for my own app. It's like, are you sure you want to run this? So now I just refreshed the page. You'll notice that the actual styles are not there. Like these buttons don't look like they're supposed to. They are still interactive, but we can't tell. And all of the ShadCN and Tailwind styles aren't present. Okay. And the reason for that, and kind of what I was stuck on before, is we have this bun plugin Tailwind installed and it works in development, but it's not yet set up where bun build can actually call these plugins. So the bun build command doesn't support plugins yet. And, you know, for those Jimmy Neutron watchers when you were a kid, there's kind of an obvious solution here. It just didn't occur to me for a while. And then I sort of had a brain blast where I was like, oh, I can just build that Tailwind myself. And so that's what we're actually going to do. And we're just going to do that with the Tailwind CLI. Let's just check out the docs here again. I could just be copying this code from my other app, but I kind of want to go through the process this way and build it up instead of just like copying, right? So we're going to install Tailwind CSS, which we might already have, and the CLI. Tailwind CSS we do already have. But that's okay, we can just install it again. And now that we have the CLI, over here, we can actually just add that in Tailwind CSS. And what is the command here? So it's -I and -O, right? So we would be like -I, source, dashboard, index.css, and -O, source, dashboard, index.compiled.css. And we're just going to run that before we run our build. Okay. So let's actually just get rid of this for a moment and just do the bun run build again here. And we can see what that does. So it runs that Tailwind command. It's very fast, which is nice. Not adding a lot of overhead here. Oh, I misspelled that. Let's delete this directory. Run it again. So now we get this index.compiled.css where all of the Tailwind stuff is, you know, compiled. And I guess these layer things is something that maybe CSS natively understands. I'm not really up on the latest CSS tech, to be honest. And now like if I update the index.tsx here to import the compiled version, and I run the build, let's see what happens. Let's put this back in. So you can see a lot of those warnings went away. We still have some related to our dependencies, but those don't seem to really matter. And now if I actually run the exe again here, go over here, refresh the page, we actually have our styles back. So this basically fixes the issue for build time. But we don't really want to have a separate watcher set up like this for runtime. You could have -- watch over here, like something like this, right? Sort of thing. Almost like with an and there or something maybe. But we don't really want to have to do that because Bun will be able to compile that tailwind in watch mode anyway, in dev mode. So what worked for me here is to add a define. So if we do like -- define release equals true. Now that's going to create this. Basically, Bun is going to inline this value when it does the compile. So anywhere it sees this release string, basically, but not just the string, but like anytime there's a reference to a release variable, it's going to be replaced with the true right in place. It's not like defining a variable. It's different, right? And that is something we can then use to kind of import different CSS depending on what we've got. So we can import index.css and we can say if release, we can import our other CSS. And you can't just import something in an if like this. These imports have to be at the top level of a namespace, but we can do a wait import with parentheses here and do a dynamic import. And this would be .compiled.css. And TypeScript is complaining that this file doesn't exist because it doesn't realize that we can import CSS files. I'm just going to add an exclamation point to say it's there. You can import it. And this is also an issue with the release thing. So now this actually works with the build still. If we run the build, we do get all these warnings because we are still importing the base CSS, but then we're also importing the compiled CSS. So technically we have some duplicate declarations maybe, but for CSS, that's not really a problem. And if we run the command again, we can see that we still have our styles. But now the problem is if I do a bun run dev and refresh here, we get an error. Release is not defined because again, this is not like a variable that we've defined anywhere. This is something that's actually being replaced by the bun build command. So what I found worked for this, and it's a bit of a hack, but if I add a new file, say call it config.ts here, and I just do export const release equals false. And then over here, we can import that. Now that default value is going to be false, but when it's actually built, it's going to be inlined to true instead, if that makes sense. And now over here, we have, a working dev build as well. So our dev build is working and our compiled build is also working. And that's great. One thing we're going to have to deal with, though, is kind of unique to this app, which is this tracker file. So let's think about that. So if we, I think it's 3000. Let's do a new tab here. Let's do a whole new tab. 3000 / tracker.js. Right. Then we get this thing, right? And that works in dev mode. If I do a build and then I do this, does it still work? Seems like it does still work, so that's good. If I change something there, like say I go into this tracker file and I add a console.log hello world, right? If I rerun the build, is it going to pick up that that needs to change? This I'm not sure about. If I refresh here, it does have it. Okay, so I guess that just works, which is really cool. I'm a bit surprised by that. And it's, well, maybe that's because of this thing though. Let's stop that. Stop our thing. Let's do hello world exclamation point, because we had a watcher automatically rebuilding that, right? Now if we do this again, so now you see it's not updating that. And we could do, you know, just run this first. Run build tracker like that. And I think that would work. Let's try that now. Run build and see if we actually get that updated exclamation points. Yep, we do have the 2 exclamation points there. And we also have a minified build because we're using the actual, you know, not using the dev thing down here, which doesn't pass in minify. So that's why it looks a little different. And that's fine. I kind of wonder though, if we look at the server here, the reason it's not actually doing it automatically, like you'll notice with the dashboard stuff, it actually built all this client-side code automatically as part of that build process and incorporated it all into the executable. And the problem is here, we're reading these files kind of dynamically like this. And let's see if I look at like noscript.gif, does that exist? Let's make sure I'm running the, yep, noscript.gif. Did it do something? It does exist. But it returns a 204 no content, which is interesting. If I actually delete these for a moment, where does this noscript.gif come from? Doesn't come from anywhere. I don't want to delete that then. I'm just going to move it out for now just to test this. So now we've removed those files. If I run this again, refresh here, do we still actually get? No. So this is kind of what I was worried about. It depends on those other files being present alongside the binary, which I don't really want. Let's move these back. So what we're going to do instead is try something a little different. If we go to our tracker here, I'm going to put noscript.gif right in here. And in the server, we're going to import these files as assets. And let's look at the bun docs to see how that works. So this embed assets business. And so we're going to want to use this with type declaration on here. So I could do, say, import noscript from @tracker/noscript.gif. GIF. Yeah, and TypeScript's not going to be happy about this because it can't find it. If I put an exclamation point there, that's not really going to help. but it's actually going to work, I believe. And then this asset we can use down here like this. So instead of embedding bun.file this thing, we do bun.file this thing, right? And then we're going to want to do the same thing for the tracker. Now, I don't really know. Let's just try the kind of naive approach here. If we do this, so the problem is if I do this, right, we're actually going to get that as like a server-side module that's being imported on the server, which isn't what we want. What we want is like the bundled version of the code as a file. So maybe if I add this with type file situation here, that'll work. What's this complaining about with tracker? Oh, declared but never read. Oh, and it has no default export. Right, but we're not actually doing that, so that's fine. So what if I do this now? Right, so now let's do bun run build and just see what it says. And we got all these invalid blah, blah, blahs. I don't see any errors relating to being unable to import. If I try and run this again, and let's also delete this tracker.js. Now, if I go here, that works. If I go here, that works. Although it's probably just doing this as a raw file. I don't think this is actually running it through buns like transpiler business. So if I were to like, you know, import, this is something we had earlier, random UUID from crypto. Normally this is something that should be automatically resolved, so to speak, or, you know, bundled up basically. So if I look here, so we see it's not, it's just doing a plain file, which let's actually leave that. Which is not what we want. We want this to go through the bundler. So there's two things that I think might work here. One is this, there might be a different way of importing it with a different type that helps. The other one is we could manually call buns transpiler, and I'm pretty confident that'll work. But first I want to see if we can do a different import and if that will help. Let's see. Okay, let's look at the HTTP server. HTML imports. Let's see if there's anything in here that kind of hints at a solution. I don't see one. Okay, So we could do this bun build thing. And I don't think this can just like straight up return a file, nor do I know if we would actually want that. What we could, with the transpiler thing, I'm kind of curious if this works. But I don't know if this is actually going to resolve imports either. But kind of here's what I'm thinking is one option, right? We could do this, transpiler, and then down here, we could do bun.file. Yeah, I don't know if that's really going to work either very well. Probably what we should do is actually just compile it into the dist directory and import it from there. So if I do @ let's just do it like this. dist/tracker.js with type file. And that's, again, just TypeScript doesn't know what's going on with these fancy imports. So now that should be working for importing this. Dunk, 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 run the steps. So now if I go over here, refresh, we do have our imported thing. And you can see, well, it looks like it totally got rid of this because it did some tree shaking thing, figured out we didn't need it. But if we actually call it and rerun this, build and analytics, let's just make sure it's working how we expect. Yeah, got all kinds of stuff in here now. Okay, let's undo that because we really don't want all those dependencies in this file. So this kind of works. Let's now delete this tracker.js as well and see if it still works. Because it should be able to work now without a dependency on that file because it's pulling it in at build time, which is the case. Okay, so now we have something that's working for our production build. The problem is probably going to come in with our dev build. If I just do bun run dev, we get this error. Now, if I do bun run build tracker dev, and then in a new tab here, do bun run dev, that should be okay. But I kind of want to have that all incorporated into one command here. I don't really know. Like if I do bun run build tracker dev and bun run dev, this won't work, right? Because it's going to wait for the tracker to finish before it ever does the other thing. Yeah. And if I control C that, yeah. Let's control C that too. What if I do it like this? Is this a terrible idea? Is that going to work? Okay, it just doesn't work. But if I do this, you can see we spawned off this other thing, and then I could do bun run dev in the same terminal window. And then it's running the both. I wonder if there's a way to incorporate that into a script here. But maybe I won't worry about that for now. Because we can always just run them in separate terminal windows, and that makes more sense to me. But for now, I have them both running in one terminal window, and that's fine too. So build tracker dev. Let's get rid of this start command. We don't need that anymore, because in production settings, people will be using this build command instead. And I'm going to break this out into its own command as well. Build tailwind CSS. And that's this. And so then this is going to run run build tailwind CSS, build tracker, and then this, maybe I'll call that build server. And then this is going to do bun run build server. Like so. So now, you know, let's just actually get rid of that terminal window so we get rid of that process running out there. If I do bun run build, it should run all three of those commands, basically. Cool. And let me update the README here with some description. Build tracker dev. Run this before bun run dev. Okay, and then we also have build single file executable is bun run build. And that should be the main things there. So let's commit all of these changes. We've kind of made a bunch of updates here. And I'm probably going to commit them mostly as a big chunk. What would I commit separately? So this and this. And this. This is moving, and it doesn't have the, do I have like a white space hiding situation here? Yeah. Let's just commit this whole thing. And that obviously we just don't need at all. This, and that should be good for the moment. So we'll call this update server to, well, let's just call it update server imports for release builds. Then this index.compile.css we don't actually want. So I'm going to add that to the gitignore. I'm going to say star.compiled.star. And if we add that, yeah, so you see it went away there. Ignore compiled files used for builds. Okay, and then we're going to update, basically all this other stuff is just support single file executable builds. with Tailwind CSS CLI. Okay, cool. Now that's out of the way, I thought that would be a good thing to get set up. I do wish we could fix these errors. I recall there was some kind of like bun init thing. That like created some kind of declaration file. -- react equal shadcn. Okay, created all kinds of stuff that I don't want, but this is what I actually wanted here. Let's just delete everything else. There's this weird build script that I don't know how to use. Let's actually just go over here and revert all of the other stuff. But we don't want this file. And this is kind of where we're going to be telling TypeScript like, hey, these modules actually do exist, right? And kind of going to do a similar thing here, except it's going to be .gif. This will be .gif. And so now that error should be fixed. Other problem is here. And maybe I can just do this. No, let's just do an as any here, just to be like, hey, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it's supposed to be there. Really, it's a string. But I don't know if there's a way to say, hey, if it's a module that's JavaScript, but also it's imported with the with file declaration, then it's just a string. I don't think there's a way to do that, really. And if I did like as string, I guess maybe we can be a little more specific there. Avoid the any. Okay, so let's do this. Are there any other TypeScript errors? If I just add a command here, compile, that just runs TSC. See if it comes up with anything else. Nope, we're clean. So let's commit that. Fix TS errors with asset imports. And add compile command. And the compile command is interesting because really Bun doesn't need to use TypeScript to compile TypeScript code, right? It has a built-in transpiler that it uses instead. The only reason that we are calling TypeScript here is to actually see what errors there are in our build. Because the other thing about Bun is if the JavaScript is fine, no syntax errors, but there's a type error, it will still build it. You know, it kind of almost strips out the types more than actually checking them all. At least that's my interpretation. I'm no expert on exactly how it works. But by running TypeScript here, we can actually type check all of those errors, make sure there's no problems in our code, because those problems can be confusing if we run into them later. Okay, so that's some, you know, kind of lower level stuff out of the way. Now let's actually get back to working on the dashboard a little bit. So if I do this, Bun run build tracker dev, new server, Bun run dev, go back here, you know, we should have our stuff working again. Fine. And I guess this should be fine too, right? So let's actually try that out. Let's do a new thingy here. I always just use this Python thing. It would be nice if I had a way to do that with Bun. It was nice and easy. I probably do. In fact, let's actually do that. So let's make a new folder here, scripts, and I'll make a new file, call it demo.ts. And in here, we'll do bun.serve. And routes, just the root route here will be bun.file demo.html. And I'll put this into the scripts directory as well. So now I think if I do, let's add another command here. We can call it, just call it demo for now. Bun run scripts demo.ts. Oh yeah, it's going to complain about that. So let's do port 8000. That's what the Python server uses. So now if I go to localhost 8000, it doesn't work. Because of course it doesn't. Is this supposed to be, it's probably supposed to be different. Like, am I supposed to do like response? I guess I could do the importing thing. So let's do it that way. Import demo HTML from demo, oops, demo.html. And then we will use that here. The thing is, I don't really want it to be mutating that stuff. But let's just see what it does. So if we look here at our script, yeah, so I think because these are absolute paths, it's not actually going to touch them. And then, you know, we can see like, oh yeah, it's able to do the tracker thing. Okay, so this way you don't have to have a Python dependency for that. And I'll add that to our README as well. Run demo app for testing tracker script. Then run demo. Okay, so let's commit all this. Update, add bun run demo command to serve demo HTML. Sure. And maybe I'll add a line here where it's like serving on port or listening. Usually people say listening, right? Listening on port 8000. Okay. Cool. Cool. So now let's get back to our actual server stuff here. And this is going to be interesting. So what we have is this look back situation. And like if I switch that to 1 day, a bunch of those events should drop off. But there's still some, presumably from today, when I've been doing this, like loading the tracker script for testing purposes. And if I switch to visits, that's interesting. Wait. The look back is resetting when I switch. That's not what's supposed to happen. Let's figure out what's going on there. So our lookback chooser is setting the app state with this, which makes sense. Oh, I probably need this situation going on there, and then also wherever I do that other thing here. I think that might be the problem. So like this use callback, which I've heard since I saw an article on Hacker News where people are like, just don't even bother using use callback. Unless you're explicitly memoizing your components, it doesn't really help you anyway. So maybe I don't even need that, but I think that was the bug there. So now if I switch this to 1 day and then switch it, yeah, it's persistent. So because the app state wasn't a dependency of the callback, it wasn't detecting when the app state changed, and this app state was actually referring to the old app state. Make sense? Probably not. Okay. And one of the things I like to do sometimes is use Immer for this, but we're not going to deal with that quite yet. Well, actually, why not, huh? Let's get into it before we have too much state management that we have to unwrap. So use Immer. This thing. So Immer.js is basically it's basically a set of utility functions in a library. And one of the big things that it does is it lets you mutate your data structure as though it's mutable, and then have it automatically do the thing to create a new object for that. So like, that was a terrible explanation, but say I'm over here and I do, in this function change aggregation type, I just do app state dot aggregation type equals new type, right? That won't work even if I do then like set app state, because the actual app state object itself is the same object. If you do object.is equality comparison on it, it's going to look like it's the same, even though this property changed. Whereas if you do this, we're constructing a new object. So it knows that that's changed. And this is fine for an object with a single property. But you can imagine if you have to update some deeply nested property, you have these like weird chains of reconstructing objects with this splat operator. I think that's what that's called. And it's a big pain. So Immer helps avoid that. And there is a use Immer package that kind of makes it work automatically with React, and this is what we're going to use. So let's install it. Don't know why I made an extra line there, but whatever. Okie doke. So with that, I believe, like, let's go to this use app state thing here. So this would be use Immer, or sorry, use Immer. And do I need to add types for this? Not sure. Use Immer from use Immer. Let's see if that. Oh, I misspelled it. I guess that explains that. Yeah, so it has the types built in. Okay, so now we have our state here, and that's pretty much all we need to do to switch to using Immer. But now, whenever we're actually calling this use app state callback, I think there should just be 2 places, but let's confirm that. So when we're reading the app state, it should be the same. It's only when we're actually updating the app state that things are going to be different. So like here, we've got app state and set app state, right? So here the set app state is actually going to be, let's see what's a good way to explain it. I don't know, this doesn't really have a good example. Oh, here is an example. So it's actually going to be, provided the current state as what's called a draft object in Immer. It's not the actual state object you're mutating. It's a draft. And let's just do that. So this is going to get draft, and you could call it state, call it whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. And we're just going to mutate it how we want. Draft.aggregation type equals new type. And then Immer is going to handle the logic of figuring out like, oh, what do I do now? Like, how do I convert this back into a state thing? And I don't think I need to return this. Like, it's not being returned here. So I'm not sure why this is. Oh, it's my types. I gotta update my types. Where are those? Over here? Yeah. So this explicitly declared type here is not right anymore. Instead, it's going to be this Immer hook app state. And it looks like it has the whole array situation all into one thing. And I import that type. So now that should have fixed that type error. Yeah. Okay, so that's a lot simpler, right? And really, let's actually just get rid of this callback too, because it's not helping anything and it just makes the code a little less readable. Okay. And then we can get rid of use callback up here. Then the lookback chooser is the other place we need to do the same thing. Let's also just get rid of the use callback here. Again, not helping anything. And here we'll just do set app state, draft dot lookback equals new value. And we can just do a standard mutation without having to do any of the splats. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that out. Get rid of that. Which we should have these running already, right? Yes. So if we go over here, refresh. So like say, let's do the same thing we did before. Switch this, and then switch this. And it's still, they're still respecting each other. Like it's not changing that back to visits. This is not changing that back to look back, whatever, we're good. Okay. So Immer just makes that mutation logic a bit simpler once we get into more complex mutations, which for these two examples, it's pretty simple. We didn't really need it, but it's setting us up for easier to read and understand code in the future. And let's do all this at once. Update use app state to use Immer. Now, usually I'll use the use Immer hook for large objects that might have complicated edits, like app state. If it's a simple object, like if it's like, is this modal open? And it's like a Boolean, true or false. Use Immer is no better or no easier to use than just use state. So this doesn't mean that we're always going to use Immer. But for our app state specifically, we do want to. Okay. Okay. So with that, we're placed to kind of do some more UI stuff. And let me look at my notes here. So select window to analyze. That's a check. Either unique visitors or page views. That's a check. let's create some of these tables. And for that, we're going to need a kind of a UI for that, right? And we could just do a simple table. So let's actually just start aggregating the data first and get that in the UI, and then we can make it look how we want, okay? Let's make a new component here. We will call it visitor or like page table. And, export const page table. And the cool thing about this is, we can just do app state. Well, we need brackets around it. Equals use app state. And we can also do const events equals use events. And we don't actually need to pass these in as props at all. And the app state, we've already seen how that works. The events, just as a reminder, this is using a 10-stack query. So I can call this use events function in as many places as I want. It's not going to do a separate HTTP request each time. So I don't have to say, put these events into the app state or track them or pass them through props. I can just continue to use this hook. Very convenient. At least I like it. Components can just use the specific data dependencies that they have, and it doesn't affect their public-facing API at all. Unless you want it to, like maybe this would be a subset of all events, and then the page table would be, would maybe accept a list of events so you could filter it down based on some other property in the UI, whatever. But for now, this is fine. And the events actually also automatically updates based on the app state lookback. So if we change the lookback, these events are going to change too, right? So the main thing we just need from the app state is the aggregation thingy. Aggregation type equals app state dot aggregation type, this thing. Okay, and then let's just return for now a list. We'll put in parentheses because why not? Unordered list. And we'll do pages dot each or dot map page and here we'll just do page. I'll have to adjust this in a minute, but that's kind of what we want to have is this pages. So in order to calculate this, we're kind of going to need to do a reduction over the events. So let's just go ahead and do that. So events.reduce, and this knows that that's an array, right? Or no, it would actually be like this. Data events, like that, right? Yeah, okay. And if it's loading, this is not going to return an array. It's just going to be null. So we can put that question mark there. In theory, I should probably have something where it's like, if it's loading, just return a skeleton, right? But we'll deal with that later. So here we've got our pages, and then we've got our event. And this is going to return, or, it's going to start with an object because we're kind of forming an association of page names, or whatever you want to call them, to numbers, the number of events on that page. So here we would do pages, event.url plus equals 1. Sure. And let me just do a quick test here. If I do bun REPL, what the heck? Huh? Didn't like that. Bun REPL? Okay. Let's just do a node REPL. So if I do null plus equals 1, that's not going to return 1, right? Or like say null plus 1. That is 1. What about undefined plus 1? That's not a number. Go figure. So, you know, I would need to have something where it's like if not pages event.url, or let's do it like this. Then that's 1. Otherwise, we're going to add 1 to it. Right, and we haven't dealt with the aggregation type yet, but we'll do that. And then we need to return pages. And what we're getting here, I think I can add as a generic where it's like a record string number. Why does it, why? I mean, you know it's not undefined because we just checked that. Come on, TypeScript. Okay. Maybe I'm doing something wrong and maybe it's come on me. I don't know, we'll see. Okay, so now we've got that, and what's going on down here? Possibly undefined. Right. Sure. Now what? I guess we would do something like this. Object dot entries pages or empty object. Sure. And this would be URL count. And so here we would have URL and count like that. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. We got to actually add it to our app. Let's just put it down here. Page table. And import. Refresh. Okay, so here we've got our page table. So there's a slash and slash demo.html. And if I just look at today, it's just a slash. So the reason there's 2 here is because our demo server originally was served at slash demo.html when we were using the Python server, but since having switched to this node script, it's now at the root URL. We have these 2 URLs. And this is what I would expect, except that that's what we want to see for visits. For visitors, there's only 1, and both of these numbers should be 1. So we'll need to adjust this to change the logic a little bit based on the aggregation type. This part is still the same. Well, actually, what's the best way to do this? Probably with some sets. So we would do new set event.user ID. And we're going to need to kind of conditionally something here. Let's leave this. I might actually just, it's a little awkward, but I might just do 2 separate aggregations depending on the aggregation type. So if it's visitors, we're going to do something else. Otherwise, we're going to do this. Right? And it's kind of weird. Actually, there's probably a better way to do this. Let's not do that. So let's say this is going to do a string and then a set of strings. And this is going to be new set event.id. We'll just use this based on the IDs. If you have tons of events, this is not the most efficient. Ultimately, we'll maybe want to adjust this logic to avoid creating some unnecessarily large sets, but whatever. This is all happening in the user's browser, so it's not my problem anyway, right? Just kidding. Kinda. Alrighty, so this is fine, but the thing is, now we need to handle if aggregation type equals visitors, then it's event.userid. Like that. And maybe I'll put that up here as like const ID equals that new set. And I guess it would be like that, right? Because it's supposed to be an iterable. And then this would be add that. And then this would be basically IDs. And it would be IDs.count or IDs.what? Size. Okay. So now we've got 1 and 1. If we switch it to visits, we've got 2 and 5. This is what we like to see, right? But it's not really pretty, first of all, obviously, but also we kind of want it to be graphical, you know, like show me some bar chart type of things here as well, not just the raw numbers. Let's see how hard that's going to be to do with the Shadcn charts, or if there's some other way to do that that might be better. I haven't done much with the charts, but I'm excited to start. I don't know if this is the most applicable usage though. Something like this is what I'm picturing. Or maybe even better like this. Right? How do I do it? Show me the code. Actually, let's just copy all of this code. And let's make a new component here. We will call it horizontal bar. I don't know. And so what is this using? It's using card, chart, and recharts. I don't really need the use client thing. I'm going to take that out. So let's see. What this has to say about getting started here. So this. Adding the chart dependency, and that's probably going to add recharts automatically too, right? Oh, this one's kind of slow. Usually these finish faster. Okay, let's commit this separately actually. So we've got our recharts dependency. And we've got card and chart. Okay. shadcn install chart. And we also need to add this, I guess, to our CSS file, which is easy enough to do. Put that in globals.css here. It doesn't really specify where. I'm just going to put it at the bottom. Okay. So now these should exist. Components UI card, components UI chart. So this kind of just needs to be like reloaded, right? Why are you complaining? Oh, it's /dashboard. Right. Okay. And it doesn't have a chart config. Oh, that's a type. Okay. And so the chart data is going to be passed in as a prop, right? And we're going to call this export function horizontal bar chart. And maybe I'll rename this to bar chart. Yeah. Okay. So let's actually just put this in, first of all, and make sure that it's rendering properly before we add a bunch of other stuff to it. Horizontal bar chart. Oh yeah, got to restart the thing. Oh, that's build tracker dev. And then down here, this just like kind of crapped itself. Sometimes, I don't know why, but sometimes I have this problem where Bun will just crash when it's in watch mode and it's trying to reload after a code update. Whoa, it's really big. And I've only ever had that problem on Windows. I don't know. When I run in a VM, I've never had that issue, but yeah. Okay, so obviously too big. Let's just put it in a div here, and we could do like width XL. How wide is that? That might be a little too wide still. Yeah. No, that's pretty good, right? Okay. Maybe even a little too big, but whatever. All right. So, and then we're going to say, actually, this should be used in page table instead. Right. Let's fix that. So this doesn't get imported here. It gets imported in page table. And this can go away. And then this can say like data pages. Let's just start there. Okay, so here we're going to accept a data prop, and it's going to be record string number, let's say, number or set any. Let's do unknown there, doesn't really matter, I don't think. So now this data should be, so, right, like that. fine. And we'll use that data instead of this data. And I don't know how that works yet. We got to figure that out. We're also going to have a label. Label string. And that's going to go here. Maybe I'll call it title actually to kind of fit the thing that it's in. And then down here we would do like title, pages, right? Okay, card description, we don't really need that. So now it looks like this. I mean, this trending stuff at the bottom, we don't need that either. Although I do feel like we might want to add something like that later. Okay. So we've got our bar chart here. And this is where like I don't really know how this stuff works. So we'll have to see. So Cartesian grid, y-axis. Where is this chart data getting used? Okay, it's passed in here. And this is expecting an array of stuff. So I could do object.entries data. And I'll kind of have to figure out, maybe there's a better way to do this. I don't know. But here now data is an array of arrays, where each array has two properties. This would be the y-axis is 0, and the x-axis is 1. Let's see if that works. It does not work. Why not? Are we getting an error, or is it just... Yeah. Well, we're getting some weird errors, but I don't think they're related to what I'm actually doing. So suppose I say data array equals object.entries data.map key value and let's put this in parentheses here. We would do like key K value B. Sure. And really I could do it like key value and then get rid of the colons. Right? So if I do that and then set this to key and this down here to value, will that work? Because now we have an array of these key value objects, which should be what it expects. Still not happy though. Oh, right. The value has to be value dot or like type of value or no. Is there like a set.isSet thing? No. So it would be value instance of set value.size, otherwise value. Right? Because we've said it could be a number or a set here. Now with that, what do we actually have? We've got 1, entry in there for some reason. Shouldn't there be two entries? Oops. So what is data? Okay, so data just has the one entry right now too. Maybe my look back window like just changed. Yeah, okay. So if I change it to 30 days, I'm actually getting both the entries. That's funny. And if I look at the data array, we get both of them in there. Looks right. Oh, this needs to be data array. Change it to 30 days. Key is the y-axis, right? There must be something else here, like I just don't really know how this stuff works. Let's maybe get rid of the chart tooltip. And like these, like I guess that would be key. And what if I just get rid of that for now? That also doesn't work. What if I get rid of this too for now? Oh, there's this key here. All these keys. And color desktop. I mean, we're not really going to need to deal with that coloring stuff yet. So we should have, I just don't know enough about how this works. Let's actually look at the rechart docs. I think this is like a rechart thing. So let's see what rechart, or is that what it's called? Yeah, let's see what recharts has to say for itself. Guide. I mean, it doesn't really say a whole lot that I feel like I didn't already know. Array key, string, value, number, data key, key, type category. What if I get rid of these? I kind of just want to get this to like the simplest minimal example that's actually working, right? Data key, key, if I get rid of fill, hmm. And really, I don't feel like I want this chart config, but I need it. Okay. What does that do? Config is passed into chart style and chart context.provider. I feel like so desktop, mobile. So this should actually be value. And that should be value. Maybe that's the problem. Okay. If I look at it for 30 days. Yeah. So it's doing a thing. Weird looking thing. But the thing is there, right? So now let's try and actually kind of unravel some of these other things. So this other label here, just out of curiosity, what does that do? Yeah, so that puts the label on the side there. We actually want that to be there, and that's the value. The label on the left is actually the key. This kind of makes sense to me now, right? So if we look at the last 30 days, we've got slash demo.html has 1 and slash has 1. We look here, it's like that. Perfectly good. I mean, the sizing's all weird. We got to work that out, right? But we're getting to the point of what we kind of want to have here. And color-wise, really, like, what is this label used for? Anything? I don't know. But let's just try it like this. And color main. This is very odd, but okay. So here we've got our, it's using the color. And the color it's using is this chart2 color, which is presumably one of the things we added down here. Yeah, that one. I mean, kind of like chart3 better maybe, but whatever. It looks too different in dark mode. Doesn't really matter. Okay. And we don't need these. Fine. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Fine. So now let's put those back. And this value.slice thing, that we don't want. Well, so what that is going to do, like if we take a look at 30 days, I thought it was going to slice this down, but it's not. Tick formatter. I really don't think we need a tick formatter. So I'm just going to comment that out too. Tooltip, we might as well have this as well. So the content, pretty, I don't even know what that is, but it works, right? Works fine. Just some magic component there. And here, we actually have kind of a thing, right? This is kind of the thing that we want to have. But what's wrong with it? Well, it's not looking very good when we only have 2 or even 1 page in the list there. There's got to be a way to limit the maximum height of each bar, right? That's like what we're talking about here. Like if I do height, and really not even the maximum height, but I kind of just want to have like a fixed height. What if I just do like 10? I don't know what that number is in relation to. Did that do anything? Didn't really do anything. Okay, let's look at the docs. I think, yeah, that's from Rechart. API, bar chart, height of the chart container. I want this bar. Bar size. And max bar size. I think I want bar size because I also don't want it to be smaller than a certain amount either, right? I just want it to always be a consistent size. I don't know if this is in pixels. Looks like it's probably in pixels. Let's do 32. Seems like a decent size, right? And then really there's like a height situation here too, where it doesn't need to be this tall. I don't know where that height is coming from. Kind of assuming it's some sort of dynamic thing. Width 100%, height 100%. What if I get rid of the width 100%? Or height 100%, I mean. Is that gonna... Didn't really change anything. Probably because there's another one right down here. Saying the same thing. Still didn't really change anything. Oh, so this height 296, say I change that to 100. Well, that doesn't really work either. Okay, probably a setting in here that we need to adjust. So that's probably in this bar chart. And like, what is this actually, what are we actually exporting from this file here? Use chart, whatever that does. Don't know what any of that stuff does, but basically we're mostly just using, like this bar chart is just coming directly from recharts. Yeah. Bar chart. Okay, let's take a look at that. How do we say certain height? There's this, but okay, let's see. So first of all, I think I can put bar height here. That was a thing, right? Bar size. $16. Instead of putting it down here, or 32. Does that work the same way? Yeah, it does. Okay. And then we'd also have, oops, we can just calculate our height because we know how many rows we have. It does, I don't see an obvious way to calculate it automatically, but we could do like data array dot length times whatever the gap default for. Let's actually specify that here just to make it really obvious. Bar gap 4 times 36, right? Which is 32 plus 4. Did that work? It did not work. Why not? What if I just set that to like 10 or 100? Still doesn't work. What about this chart container? Awful lot of stuff. And there's this like responsive container thing. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be working. What if I go over here and do like height 10, just out of curiosity? Okay, so that makes it shorter. Problem is it's going to be too short. Like you see here, it's too short and it's causing the bars to be smaller than they otherwise would. So I might just do something janky here. Class name, height, this. Maybe there's a reason we're not supposed to do it this way. I don't know. Does that work? Doesn't even work. Why not? That should work, right? Yeah. But Tailwind doesn't like the interpolation thing, I guess. Oh my god. See, this sometimes it just dies. I think that's also to do with the Tailwind plugin, for what it's worth. That's okay. What? That's really interesting. But what we can see is this dynamic approach is not going to work. What if I do height auto and then set this down there? Does that work? Wait, you have to do your thing again. No. Yeah, not sure exactly how to do that, but I guess we'll worry about that later. It's not the hardest thing to change. Maybe once the UI is a little more fleshed out. If this was actually in like a in a different container, it might work differently. So I'm not going to spend too much time fixing that at the moment if it's not obvious. I think the point is it just resizes to fit whatever containing box it's in, which fine, you know. This site doesn't seem to do anything at all. And there's also like I don't want them to be kind of like centered either is the other thing. Kind of looking to see like, is there a way to change that? If I just look at bar, maybe. Like what I want is these bars to be at the top, not in the middle, right? And if we could fix the size, it wouldn't really matter. But it would be nice if we could just say, don't put them in the middle, put them at the top. But I don't see an obvious way to do that. I mean, and we don't really need this Cartesian grid either. Like that's what's putting these lines. I think if I just get rid of that, it's just going to take the lines away. And that's fine. We don't need those lines. Yes. And I don't know. Maybe that's the best we can do for right now. I'm kind of curious if I go over here, if I get rid of this responsive container thing, what's it going to do? Now it just doesn't work at all. Okay, great. What if I do that and then set the height explicitly here? No, it still doesn't work. Okay. Kind of wondering if that responsive container thing was causing a problem, but gonna try to avoid messing with it too much here. Flex aspect video. I mean, I don't want that, right? Do I want that? I don't think I want that. Now what if I do this? Okay, well it's not, like if I then did like each auto. Okay, let's actually, like, I don't really want to be changing this component much, right? Because this, and I formatted it, so now it's got all these changes in there. Let's not even include those. But here, where we render that chart container, that's the thing we were looking at, right? Yeah. I might add some class names here. So we had that aspect video thing, but what if I did like height? We saw that doing like height 100, for instance, does work, right? Does it work? What's going on with that now? It's almost like it was changing the width. Width 10. Yeah, I think 100 might not even have been a valid one. So this does work. If I set it to auto, it's still putting me in this letterbox ratio. Is there an aspect auto? Okay, so now, you know, if I did height 10, yeah, So how do I have this dynamically change that? Let's put this back in here, just out of curiosity. 100. Yeah, it doesn't. And what we've got here in our chart container is a flex thingy, right? Flex. And then justify center. Which kind of makes sense. So if we think about this as a flex, I know there's some way to do this. Like we want it to grow and shrink automatically, right? Does that need to be specified? Okay, well, it's clear that I don't know. And again, I think it'll be more clear once we actually start building out the rest of the UI, what we want it to look like. So let's just leave it at that for now. We've got our chart. It's not exactly what I want to see, but it's close enough. And I don't think there's really a way to do the thing I want to do there. So let's just say this is fine. Okay, so that's actually, you know, kind of checking off our pages aggregator, right? If we go back to the notes here, table of pages. And we could have something about average time spent. But let's do that separately for now. Show average time spent per page. Although it wouldn't be that hard to figure that out, right? So I'm actually thinking now we probably want to aggregate this differently. Because the data that this is expecting is more of an array, but we don't really want to just use an array naively because then we're going to have to do like a quadratic time algorithm situation. So I might just continue to do an object. But this is going to be an object too. And this will be .IDs. This is actually going to be, let's call this like, well, whatever, we can just put it in here still. An object with IDs as a set and average view time as a number. And so this would be average view time equals let's make this an optional, actually, because, or you could say number or no, fine. So up here, we're also going to have like const view time equals event dot end time minus event dot start time. And we can only do this if we have an event dot end time. Otherwise, it's null, it's unknown, right? And that would happen if this is a no script visit. If it's a no script visit, we can't tell how long they were on the page. So then this would be view time. Oh, and that's not equals, that's just a colon, right? Otherwise, we're going to do this, and if view time let's say like const existing equals that. So if existing is undefined, then we assign it. Otherwise, existing.IDs, maybe we don't need the question mark now. Existing.average view time, add view time, and maybe, so we could incrementally calculate the average, but I think that requires us to know how many views we have up front, which we don't. So let's actually make this total view time, and then we can calculate the average later. Kind of awkward, all this null checking stuff. It's one of the things, like I used to use Clojure, the Lisp variant, and that has a lot of really elegant behavior around like not needing to do this. You know, it handles the default case automatically. If you're incrementing two values, it's just going to return the second value if the first value is nil. You know, you don't have to do this like check. So it's a lot fewer lines of code. But anyway, total view time. Yes, like this. Okay, so here we've got our pages thing. And then really, we're going to need to convert this into a bar chart format. Pages for chart equals and I almost want to just put this code all in here. Is that a terrible idea? It probably is, because we're going to need to reuse this a lot. So let's start without that. So if we do object.entries pages dot map page data, and we're going to return an object. So here we're aggregating this object, and we're doing it as an object so that we don't have to make a quadratic time algorithm where we do like put it as an array and then do like array dot find where blah 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 inside this reduce. That's iterating over the array twice, right? If we do it this way, we iterate over it once here and then again here. So you're iterating over it like 2n times instead of n squared times, you know, in terms of like the big O notation. Anyway, this is going to be, you know, need to do that. And so here we're going to have page, let's do it like this. Page, just do it like that. And dot 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 data, sure. Or no, let's say page average view time data dot total view time divided by data dot IDs dot count dot size. And then we'll also have a count data dot IDs dot size. Right. And this would be like, let's do conditional here. Null, just 0, I guess. We probably need a better way to do that, but whatever. The issue is that if we just call it 0, that's technically not accurate, right? It's not like everybody bounced off the page immediately. It's like we don't know. But that can be a future enhancement. Maybe I'll add a to-do, little to-do. What do we set this to if total view time is null? It's not really 0. It's more unknown. But fine. And down here, this would be pages for a chart. And I'll probably make this, so I'll probably make this generic if I can. Like data type. What, you don't like that? Oh, I used the wrong arrow. Okay. And then this is an array of data type. And then we also have y-axis key is key of data type. And I could do extends object, sure. And then there's also x-axis key. And then there's also, well, let's just do that first. Y-axis key, x-axis key. We're kind of trying to make this like a reusable chart thing here, right? So this y-axis key, of course, goes here. And anywhere else that we have key, so here as well. Doesn't like that because it thinks it can be a symbol, which, I mean, technically it can, right? So this is value, right? So that's the x-axis key. Same thing here. It can be a symbol, but it's not going to be a symbol. So how do we tell it that? I could do like and string or number. Sure. That fixes it, right? Yeah. Okay, so now down here we need to pass in like x-axis key is page. And we even get some autocomplete, which is cool. Y-axis key is count. And then we're also going to have extra label key, which is going to be average view time. Right? Extra label key. Okay, let's actually just see that this is still working. Okay, and it's not. Great. Oh, not this. Just pass the data right in there. I mean, it's doing something, but it's not doing the right thing. Why not? Is it our data or is it our graph code? So we have an object, average view time, count, and page. That's right. X-axis, oh, I got these backwards. The x-axis key should be count. And the y-axis key should be page. Yeah, okay. So now we've got our, we look 30 days, you know, we've got our different things. That's working well. And now we need to actually use this extra label key. So I'm kind of thinking, where I want it is in this label thingy here, label list. This is coming from, yeah, from whatever. So let's go over here, label list. The key of a group of label values. So let's just try adding another one here. Extra label key, right? That's optional. So we could, well, let's worry about that in a minute. Okay, so it is doing the thing, but you can see it's not, like I just want these to be appended to each other. You know what I'm saying? So like what if I did content is, what do we get in our content here? Props. X, Y, width, height, and value. Value being the name. So what I could do is maybe something a little odd here, but if I did label and actually had this be like this, page, parentheses, this, and then this could actually be like NA. Let's do it like that. And then this would be label. And maybe I would call this label, just label key. And then here, label key, label key. And here it would be, get rid of this. And this would be label key or y-axis key if they did not specify a label key. So now, what's wrong? If we look at our pages for chart here, the label is that. And I mean, you know, this should be divided by 1,000 again, technically speaking. So why isn't that showing up as a label now? Oh, because of the content thing, probably. Yeah. Okay. And I will do a truncate on that as well. Trunk. Or let's say round. Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of what I was looking for. If we look at this, 30 days, we can see, that. And it's a bit of a problem if the line is too small as well. And I could do label key here, maybe too. Let's see what that looks like. So this would be like label key or y-axis key, I think. It's not really doing what I thought it was going to do. Well, let's worry about that later as well. Okay. In any case, we have something going on here. It's not perfect, but we're actually getting the data. Let's go ahead and make sure we're a little bit cleaned up here. Yeah, let's get rid of all of this. Don't need this. Don't need this. Don't really need this. But I don't understand what it's for, and it seems like it breaks when I take it out. Don't need that. Yeah, something like that. And then here, doing all right. Get rid of the console log. This is fine. Let's get rid of these events here as well. That's just not, we just included that kind of as a demo. Okay, so now, we've got our thing going on. Let me do a quick time check. A little over 2 hours. We might actually add another chart here. Let's do include total in charts. That could be a good thing to add, actually. I don't think that'll be too hard. So like if we did pages for chart dot we should just do it this way, I guess. Dot shift, I think. Or no. I want to do like a push to the front. Is that unshift? Yeah. And this will be one where it is page total, count, pages for chart dot reduce total page total plus page dot count starting at 0. This is a number. And maybe I don't need that. And average view time, or no, label is this thing, which maybe I'll make a little helper function for. Const build label page and data. Build label, page data, and this would be like, well, it's kind of a pain actually. Let's not do it this way. Let's get rid of this for now. Might be a bit of duplication, but whatever. So the label here is going to be total, right? And then this is going to need to do let's actually do a separate reducer. Pages per chart, because I don't want to have to reduce this too many times here. Data page, dunk dunk. And then this is going to be an object where total view time is null and count is 0. And so this will be if page dot let's actually put the total view time in here too. Total view time data dot total view time. Yeah. If page dot total view time, then we will add that to our data here. Yep. And got to do this chunk again. Okay. And then I need to give this a type. Total view time, number or null, and count number. And then this has to return data. And then we also need to do data.count plus equals page.count. So then down here, this is going to be total data dot count. And the label is going to be this. And total view time, total data dot total view time. Yeah, so I think that will do it. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so now we have a total. If I look at 30 days, seems like that's about right. Okay, fine. Let's check that off. And I'll just put that as part of this commit here. So let's do this commit, add table of views, or add table aggregating events by page viewed. Okay, pretty good. Kind of curious to see how much of a pain it's going to be to do the same thing for a different aggregation key. So let's do it again. Well, we don't even really have these other values, though, do we? We don't know the host name. We don't know the referrer. We don't know the country. We don't know the browser or the device or the operating system. So all of that is going to need to be added to our events before we can really aggregate anything based on them. Like in this tracker script, we're going to need to actually track more data. Currently, we just track the URL and the duration, both of which we've used in this table. So let's actually not do that. I think I'll probably call it for today. I don't want to go too much over time here. So let's go ahead and push our changes. Let's actually just do a quick compile here. Make sure I didn't introduce any TypeScript errors. Looks like we're good. Push our changes. And that'll be it for today. And next week we'll work on adding more of these tables and, overall improving the UI kind of layout and structure so that it's not quite so janky. All right. Thanks, all. See you next week.